Hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to welcome you to this Jump Cloud webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I really want to, focus here for a moment and introduce our fantastic guest. So before we get to that, though, I do want to point out that, we are going to be giving away 3 one-year subscriptions to the 10% Happier app as part of this webinar today. And we will be adding the submission form for entry during the last 10 minutes of the webinar today. Attendees do have to, submit the form after the webinar and before tomorrow at midnight Eastern in order to be eligible. And we'll also be linked to that same survey in the follow-up email. So if you have to duck before the end of the webinar, you're going to get follow-up with all of that. Not to mention the fact that you can watch this webinar on demand at a later time. It is my great joy to introduce Alexis Santos to the Jump Cloud community. Alexis has been in the field of mindfulness and meditation since 2001. After graduating from Harvard University in 1995, he spent several years in medical school before leaving his chosen career as a doctor to seek out a different path. It was while traveling in India that he was introduced to insight meditation. Alexis teaches meditation at retreat centers around the world. He is featured on the 10% Happier meditation app and is co-founder of the Open Door Meditation Community in Portland, Maine. Alexis's teaching style is natural and uncrafted. He brings a practical, intuitive, and compassionate approach to the development of wisdom. So, Alexis, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us here at Jump Cloud today.
Great, thanks, Tom, and good to be with all of you. And all the various locations that you're tuning in from. So just a pleasure and a privilege, honor to be with you.
So we know that this is Mental Health Awareness Month here in May. IT teams are often the engine that powers everything from small to medium-sized enterprises because their role and their value cannot be overstated. I spent a 20-year career in IT, and I know exactly how critical to every business's operation the person is who manages their IT resources. As IT admins cover, a fully remote world as well as an in-person world, as well as hybrid models and things along those lines, the job isn't an easy one. And certainly we understand over the last 3 years, the pandemic has changed a lot of the organization's approach to work. So that it feels like it's always on in a lot of ways. In a recent edition of Jump Cloud's Small to Medium Enterprise IT Trends report, we found that IT teams in today's subject matter, in today's small to medium enterprises, are overwhelmed and working overtime, though they are pursuing better work-life balance. We're all proactive folks in IT. You think about how to avoid the next crash, how to avoid the next problem, how to deal with all of those kind of things. You think about what you need in your storeroom in order to be proactive when a laptop doesn't work. Why not think about what you need in mental wellness proactively before the next crash, right? And, Alexis, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you give us a better introduction to yourself than the one I just gave? Because I feel like you probably know yourself a lot better than I do.
Well, maybe I know how crazy the mind can be and how easy it gets tipped into overwhelm and anxiety and fears and worries. So in some ways, my introduction feels a little bit like I'm a human being on this journey from birth to however long we have. I think, what you offered was lovely. And, this is my passion to both know in some ways what is most fundamental and direct, which is our own immediate experience, and to talk about that. Right, it's what I do now for my life is and now it's interesting. Mindfulness used to be this kind of a little bit strange term, or awareness practices. It felt a little bit almost like a woo-woo, like it's out there, it's a strange thing. You have to explain yourself why you might be doing it. And now it seems somehow in the last few years particularly, there has been a very deep acknowledgement about the nature of the mind and what is true health. It's not purely physical, it's clearly not material, right? Material wealth isn't well-being. And we're often given, tools and practices about the body and how to live life. And yet the actual tools to take care of the mind, because they're subtle, and even knowing the mind is a little bit hidden from us, right? How do we actually take care of the mind? That's what mindfulness practices are all about, and what today's discussion, I hope, will kind of cover some of this terrain.
That's fantastic. And thank you so much for spending the hour with us today. I really appreciate you joining us here at Jump Cloud. This is a topic near and dear to my own heart. Mental health challenges are constantly part of any IT person's life.
Yes.
I think that's a great opportunity for us to talk about how we can get better as admins by studying our own selves. And so to that effect, I want to start with a very straightforward question that's incredibly complex, which is, what actually is mindfulness in your opinion?
Yes, and particularly now that this word is used so much, it can almost become something that's hard to know. Well, what is mindfulness? It's interesting. Maybe it's the most direct way to know it. I'm just going to invite us into just a few seconds, and we're going to have a little bit of a practice after we do, I think, some conversation. We'll do maybe 5 minutes or so, but let's just right now take a moment and just recognize where you are, right? Recognize that there is a body sitting here, right? Maybe feeling the pressure below you in your chair. Right? There's no rush in this moment. We're allowed to be here fully. Maybe even feeling the full breath for a moment. Just taking a moment can allow the eyes to close for a second. So inviting you to do that if that feels comfortable. And as we begin to feel our direct experience, there's a swirling aspect of the mind, thoughts. Maybe nothing too clear arises, but there's a sense maybe of being here in the present moment. Often we experience some physical or bodily, mental energies. Right? Well, what does it feel like to be alive, just in this moment, not creating, not getting rid of anything? Okay, so just a little moment of touching in. Allow your eyes to open again if you'd like. One of the first things that we often discover, if you ever have an opportunity to take a little bit more time for trying to pay attention to your direct experience, is we really start to encounter that there is a mind, right? We often overlook that. But if we say, for example, let's go ahead and try and just be aware of the body that's breathing, and we watch the breath as it comes in and it goes out, and then before we know it, the mind is kind of thinking about, the day and all the pressures we have, or something someone said and something that we're carrying that hurts. And we begin to realize that this mind, this life that we have, that we think we are in control of, actually has its own momentum. So when it has momentum of confusion or of anxiety, then that becomes the flavor, right, that we experience the world through. When we have momentum of anger, or if we've had some really good experiences, there's the momentum of joy. But we see that the mind itself isn't something that we can just control. Otherwise, the instructions in meditation would be very brief, and we just give them one time. We would say, pay attention to your direct experience, allow the body and mind to be as it is, right? Relax into the nature of what's here. And we might be able to do that for a moment, but then we see that the mind actually is this conditioned experience, right, process that we need to take care of. And it's an ongoing process, right? So each time we experience some frustration or anger, we need to actually deal with that. Just like, trying to take care of the body, we need to take care of the body, not just once, but in an ongoing way. Now that may sound like, oh no, like the body is hard enough to take care of. How do I take care of the mind? Hopefully you'll feel that this really is a like a beautiful invitation to be at home, right? To not kind of be away from our own direct experience. So mindfulness, I just want to say a couple of quick things about what mindfulness is not and why so many people feel when like the immediate feeling is, oh, I can't practice, right? And so oftentimes we think mindfulness means to stop the mind from thinking, right? So we say, I can't meditate, my mind thinks too much. We might also say, I'm really like a energetic person, I can't be calm. So then we think mindfulness means being calm. Or we might think meditating means like to just focus and concentrate the mind, penetrate into the breath, right? Or into some experience. Mindfulness really is this quality that allows us to know our direct experience just as it is. It's a soft, kind of open knowing. And the thing is, most of us would assume that we're in our direct experience all the time. We think, well, I'm present. If you walk up to someone and you say, do you know your experience? And most people, we feel like we do. But to really be mindful in the present moment is to know what we call in meditation practices, our direct experience, which is either one of the five we call five sense doors, which means our seeing, our hearing, smelling, tasting, or the body experiences. So those are the five senses. Or we know the mind, right? That's another, we call the mind door. And that's where we find all the emotions, all of our feelings, our thoughts. So any moment that we say, are we being aware? It's not some story that we're having in the mind. It's even more simple than that. In that case, it would be to know that the mind is thinking, or to know that we're feeling stressful, or to know that we're feeling relaxed. So often we're so entangled in our experience that we have no perspective. We're not actually able to know our direct experience. So for example, we are breathing all day long, right? Hopefully you've been breathing, Tom, since you woke up, right? So there's been some breathing happening, and either you're frozen or I'm frozen. Let's see. Are you there, Tom?
I apologize. My internet just cut out for a second there.
Okay. You stop breathing. I was just saying.
Yes, I
I hope
did
you're
actually.
breathing.
As soon as I
Oh,
figured out
okay.
it was the internet that had gone out, I did indeed stop breathing.
Okay. Well, so what I was saying was that we are breathing all day long, hopefully, right? Unless the internet goes out, but we're breathing. Do we know that we're breathing? How often do we recognize that we're breathing? Right? And right now, when I just say as a simple thing like that, to notice the next breath as it comes in, right? And we begin to notice that. That's the quality of awareness. It brings us right into our direct experience. And it doesn't need to exclude anything as the mindfulness matures. So, yeah. And I can pause there, see if there's something that you want to jump in with, Tom, or.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the concept of being present with yourself is so important. And controlling, and obviously the second you think about is, do I have control of my own breath? Do I have control of my own heart rate? Can I calm myself down, or can I encourage myself to be in a different mood than I'm currently in? But when we think about mindfulness, how does it help with stress? Why is being mindful of the current situation so useful?
Great questions. I'll start with that second one. So why is it useful? On a big picture, kind of on a fundamental picture, when we think about what is the opposite of mindfulness, we could say is to be absent-minded, is to not be fully there in our experience. And when we're not fully there, in some ways we're not fully alive. And we hear this, oftentimes many of us probably have this experience of knowing someone who towards the end of their life maybe had regret of not being more present for their family, this desire for just being really in the midst of our experience in a sense of fully being present. So in some ways, mindfulness is a natural quality, and so natural that we overlook it as actually this quality of mind that allows us to really be there for our life. That if we don't know what's happening, if we're just being absent-minded, let's say we have kids that we're attending to, or a partner, or a friend, or a family, and we're caught either in some stories in our mind, or maybe we have some judgments that we're annoyed and angry about with them, and we don't see that. Now we're just caught in this distortion or absent-mindedness, and we're not fully present. So in some ways, mindfulness allows us to be fully alive, right? And we each matter. And this is a really amazing thing that John Cloud would offer, something like this that says, you matter, your well-being matters, your mental health matters. That's extraordinary. That's not something companies would have done, some years back. And this is now really a new kind of period, it feels like, in time where we're really recognizing what is it that we're doing with our life, and are our jobs something that are just kind of separate from our life that we just kind of dive into and get overwhelmed, or is it something that actually we can invest in each other, right, as a community, so that our well-being, what are the tools that help us to be able to do our work, right, in a way that feels really deeply meaningful. So mindfulness, in terms of utility, it also offers us a broader perspective. When we learn to pause and take a moment, instead of being funneled into the sort of narrow, let's say, tunnel vision of something that we get caught up into, mindfulness allows us to actually open up for a moment. What else is there? We pause. So it offers us this enlarged perspective, right? Not just the particular train, right, energy that we've fallen into. Mindfulness allows us to be, again, more balanced. We might remember, oh, wow, there is a body down below my head, right, that I hadn't actually felt. And so even as I say that, just feeling your body, and there may be a sense of being more inhabiting your full experience. And the last thing in terms of why is it useful, I just want to speak to, is this quality of mindfulness allows us to see the nature of experience clearly. And again, most of us would assume we are seeing clearly. The thing is, because the mind is usually not seen, if we, let's say, are feeling frustrated, or again, stressful or anxious, judgmental, our inner critic, self-worth, right, is arising, and we're looking through those lenses, we see the world that the mind is now distorting, right? We only see the distortion. We don't actually see clearly. And our experience is put together very quickly. What we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we think about is all put together so quickly as a unified experience, and we don't recognize, for example, again, right now, just taking a moment, that the experience of the body, the sensations you might experience in the body of sitting, is distinct from the experience of hearing, right? And if you're able to hear this, if we say the working ear door is functioning, then you have this experience of hearing. And then there's an experience of seeing. And the more that we're able to do that, we have insights about how what it is that we experience affects us, we're not just kind of swept into the current of things. We're able to be really clear as much as we can be about, let's say, some lens that we're wearing at that moment, some kind of glasses we put on that's, we say, rose tinted or not. It's like, put on the glasses. Oh, there, I can see more clearly. Right, so this is like mindfulness. You put on and you can see, look, I can see clearly, but we assume we are. And we assume that let's say the depressive energy that we might feel, or the overwhelming, that's reality. But we need to be able to then do is step back, and then we can start to be aware, oh, this is what depression or anxiety feels like, if that makes sense. So, and then you asked the question about stress, particularly. How does it help with stress? I think the first thing to notice in some ways that what does the experience feel like when we're stressful? Right, the body feels tight. There's a bodily component. Maybe the shoulders are hunching up. The mind probably gets locked into an urgency, right? Sort of like we're toppling forward. Taking a pause feels like the last thing that we can do when we're in this sort of forward, almost like falling, tumbling forward. So unless we begin to recognize that there is this bodily component and really that there is this mind, it's difficult to start to relate to this quality of stress in a skillful way. So it's like when a doctor, right, the path that I have been on, like trying to diagnose something, you first have to see, well, what is the ailment? Oh, there is this thing that you're suffering from. What is the cause, right? And what is the way out? What is the path? What is the cure? So when we see that stress oftentimes is the mind in a reactive state, right? Resisting something, maybe in a thought loop of overwhelm, we can start to actually take a moment. Our mindfulness can start to feel the energy of the stress in the body, right? Maybe start to sense the thoughts that are running. We're not feeding them. We're becoming mindful that the thinking mind is racing. And what one meditation teacher, famous, well-known teacher, John Kabat-Zinn, describes this as is we often think that stress somehow is wrong, something's gone wrong, when in fact it's more helpful to see stress as a natural process, like the waves. And so he would say, you can't stop the waves from coming, right, in the ocean. If you try and stop the waves, impossible, right, on the shore, but you can learn to surf. Mindfulness practice is really, in a way, learning to surf life. And what does it mean to be surfing when there's stress and anxiety in the body? First is to say it's natural. We all experience it. It's the mind getting kind of entangled and caught and feeling racy. So first giving the mind and body full permission, we're all in this together, right? It helps to recognize we're not alone. I too feel stress, right? I too can feel overwhelmed and anxious, right? And then as we start to see it as being natural, then we can start to take some steps back, right? And become mindful of it. We might pause. We might take a deeper breath. So again, right now, if you want, just taking a deeper breath and noticing what that feels like, right? We're breathing again, but so easy we're kind of not in our direct experience. And there's an analogy of what mindfulness feels like in terms of once we start to become more mindful, there's a difference between being swept in the river of experience, which is where we're in the river of experiences, versus what does it feel like when we're comfortable sitting on the banks, right, or the shore alongside some river that's flowing, and we're able to observe what's going on. So it's very different being swept away in something versus observing it, right? And that's how, over time, we can actually start to see how we can be with stressful moments. So I hope that touches on some things, probably raises more questions than it answers, but That's how we learn. And
I think in the best possible way, though. I think that, we start to think about, everything can feel so overwhelming. And to be able to start small
right.
with something as simple as your own breathing, and to be able to
Yes,
take yourself out of a difficult moment just by taking in a deep breath can, help you reset everything that you're talking about and reset you as outside of being swept away, but on the shores watching the river.
yes, yes.
One of the things I think about a lot is how busy days can be. And
Hmm.
you might be running from meeting to meeting or ticket to ticket or call to call. Is it realistically possible to have a mindfulness practice in the workplace? Can you actually practice while you're on the computer as we are now and dealing with stressful activities and concepts and Slack pings and Gmails and your phone flashing you all of the alerts that you've got?
Yeah. Well, the short answer is yes. It is possible. Um, it's not easy in some ways, to be really present and mindful with our experience, and yet it really is fully possible. So, with the teacher that I studied with, and I was in a meditation center actually in Burma. You don't have to do that these days. It's everywhere. You can find practices that are supportive. And one of the ways that he would kind of show the ease of it, he would give very simple, like, you know, instructions in the beginning. So right now, for example, if you just like, put your hands together and it says, can you feel your fingers touching? And Tom, can you feel your fingers touching?
I
Might feel
can.
some pressure,
Mhm.
the coolness. Okay. Can you feel maybe if your feet on the floor, if your feet can feel some pressure down there?
Yep, I'm feeling the wood beneath my feet right now.
Great. So when did you become aware of your feet?
When you mentioned them, not until.
Yes, exactly. Was that hard to do?
No, it was
So
top of
right,
mind as soon as you said the word.
exactly. So that's the essence of being aware, of being mindful. Easy to forget, easy to forget to notice that the body is breathing. As soon as we remember, and that's one of the in a way definitions of mindfulness, is this quality of remembering the present moment.
Hmm.
As soon as we remember, it might not be that hard to know we're feeling stressful, but there's a big difference between being aware of stress and being in it. Being in it, right, we're being swept away. Being mindful of it, this mindfulness quality is growing. Everything that we're being mindful of is growing this quality. Just like everything that we may be angry about, everything we might be frustrated about will grow frustration, will grow anger. Anything that we become mindful of. In the beginning, we might feel like we're not getting anywhere, but the awareness is growing. And awareness again of what? You know how the body is feeling. For example, right now, you might notice that you're hearing. Just the very simple thing that hearing is happening. Again, if we have the working ear door, we're hearing sounds as soon as we wake up. But how many moments of our life do we actually recognize in the present moment hearing is happening? Not hard to do, but we don't notice it, we forget. So that's why we say it is possible. So for example, you're looking at the computer right now. If your eyes are open, you have the working eye door. If you're on this webinar and hopefully you're paying a little bit of attention, try a little bit. Now, instead of just being immersed in what it is you're seeing and hearing, just take a moment and settle back in your body. Feel your body as I'm speaking. Be more in your body at home than out in the screen. See if you can do that. Just feel the body. Maybe feel the back of your body, back of your chair. And now see that the computer is there. There is a computer. Even though we've been maybe absorbed in the image, now just notice the computer. That's possible to do. That's a little bit of a resting moment, a little bit of a break, right? Ah, yes, I'm here. There is a body and I can see the computer and there's a little bit broader perspective. Do you get that, Tom?
Hmm. I can kind of,
Yeah.
I
So
feel like my vision just kind of steps back and I can see more of what's
exactly,
around me rather than,
exactly. Yes. Normally we're so zoomed in, it's difficult to have any space in the heart and mind. So
hmm,
this way of remembering the present moment could be pausing, could be taking a deep breath. It could be just settling back and remembering, oh right, I'm sitting here and there's this room and we can look around and notice what happens when we do that. Does it actually help our work to have the mind totally absorbed for hours and hours, getting completely exhausted and overwhelmed? Does it actually help us? And we sort of sometimes think it does, but a balanced mind, a healthy mind, can do what needs to be done, right? With skill, with wisdom, with clarity, and actually over time keeping up with ourselves rather than getting to the end of the day feeling completely exhausted and done, that we have no more space to be patient with our loved ones, right? Or with ourself, right? So this is possible. And the teacher that I had studied with, even though he was a monk, before he became a monk, he had a busy job with his family business selling textiles, right, in the marketplace. And that is where he developed his practice. He decided not to just spend the whole day kind of gossiping and trying to just, spin the wheels of the business, but to actually take care of himself as much as he can while also taking care of the business. So we do it in a very relaxed way. Don't put too much energy into the mindfulness, otherwise we feel like it's too hard to do. So very light remembering. That is really the secret to doing this
hmm.
in daily life.
Well, and that goes right into one of the management concepts that IT professionals know day in, day out. The best touch for managing a user's computer and their experience is the lightest touch. And so if we think about it from
Exactly.
that
Oh, that's
perspective,
beautiful.
you do not want to be heavy-handed. You do not want to be engaged in such a way that, that folks have a negative experience around IT. It's all about providing guardrails without providing chains.
Perfect. That's great. I mean, that analogy is fantastic. Again, if we want to be doing this caretaking of the mind, it needs to become natural.
Hmm.
Natural, meaning in some ways effortless, even though we have to put in the effort of remembering, and we'll overshoot of trying too much, or we'll undershoot of not doing enough. Over time, we start to learn, what does it feel like to just remember where we are, that there is a body, it is breathing, and check it out and see, does it actually interfere with the work that we need to do? Or does it give us a perspective, balancing the mind, the mental energies, and now we maybe even have more skill of going, oh, and sometimes this is, we often, say that eureka moment often happens when we're relaxing in the shower or something, because a relaxed mind and relaxed body actually functions better.
Hmm.
So the light touch of awareness, not hard to do, difficult to remember. It's not tiring. In fact, it's the opposite of that. It's coming back home, right, to a more relaxed state, even when we're in the conceptual mode. And we have to be able to use our concepts and our thoughts. But that is not all that's happening in any given moment. So over time, even as we're busy in a conceptual moment, we might also be able to relax the shoulders or take a deep breath, even as we do deep conceptual work. That really is, it is possible, and it's part of our practice over time.
I love that. I think that's spectacular. I do want to give us a chance to get to a guided meditation today. Before we do, I want to, take one quick moment. And this is about how we build these kind of things into our own days. It always feels like we're always going a million miles an hour. There is never a shortage in IT of things to do. Someone's machine is always breaking. Someone's machine is always being replaced. Someone new is always starting, or someone new is always leaving. And so we think about this from the perspective of, you know, building the time into your day to keep going with a practice Is that as simple as putting something on your calendar, or is it as simple as just working to have a spot to breathe in your day?
Yeah, honestly, this, and because I teach meditation retreats that are often, as short as a day long or 2 days, and then as long as a week, even, believe it or not, 6 weeks. Sometimes folks will go on long retreats. Um, Even then, at the end of those retreats, where all you've been doing is getting these meditation instructions, even then, the question is, how do we keep going? With all the stuff that we have and all the things, how do we, and the reason why that question comes up is because this feels good. It feels good to actually feel more settled, to know the nature of the mind and the body. At first, it may not feel good to know that we're feeling stressful, like the mindfulness, we're noticing more stuff, but we have to remember is that the noticing is growing. It's the noticing that starts to feel more and more pleasant because it's the noticing that allows experience to be as it is. Right? That's part of our training. So just, part of it is that I've already given in some ways the tips, which is to really recognize in some ways dropping these moments in during the day is the secret, right, of doing this. And it might be, let's say every time you turn on the computer, maybe that becomes a habit of, as I turn the computer on, I'm going to take a moment and check in. Tom, you said, as we were just chit-chatting beforehand, before the day starts, you take a mental temperature of yourself. Like, what's really big? What are you worried about? What's on the mind? And what are you excited or nervous about? In some ways, those moments are mindful moments, right? When we really recognize this is what's being known right now. This is a feeling and an energy, a mood. And we're starting to actually give it some space. We don't have to change it. Doesn't have to be any different. And that's the beautiful thing about awareness. Nothing needs to change. On a practical level, for some folks, carving out 5 or 10 minutes to just take care of the quality of our mind, to just sit down or do some kind of simple walking back and forth, oftentimes sitting down or lying down, where what we're doing is attending to the mind. And again, we take so much time, or even if we don't, we know about what it means to take care of the body, to eat well, and there's, do all these efforts to diet and eat the right food, or shower. Like, how many of us go for like 2 or 3 weeks without showering or bathing? And if you do, someone eventually, will say something. And yet the mind determines how we speak to each other, right? It determines what decisions we make. Are we actually following our aspirations, right, in our life? So learning how to take care of the mind is so valuable that once we start to realize the importance of that, we do want to invest time. So maybe carving out a few minutes, right? 5 minutes here, 5 minutes at the end of the night. Oftentimes, for me, it's like before going to bed. If I'm going to do that sort of formal practice, put in those little bits of time. Anytime we pause is wonderful, because anytime we do that, we're putting in a seed for that to arise again. Just like every time we get annoyed, we're putting in the seed of annoyance to rise. Every skillful state of mind, when we remember there's a body breathing, or we remember that we're speaking, harshly with our loved ones, but now we're feeling it and knowing it, that's awareness. We're planting those seeds, and those seeds will come back again and again. That's why really not to underestimate during the day, any moment that we remember is powerful. It's conditioning the mind. So there's no really secret. It's really knowing ourselves. Do we like discipline? Do we like more relaxed? Finding, like the meditation app that you mentioned, 10% Happier, has some great, I'm on there, but I'm not talking about myself, but there are great teachers and meditations that are on there. Fantastic. And there's some free material on there as well. You can just open it and check it out if this is inspiring to you. Yeah, so I hope that's at least some things. Maybe some folks will have some questions we can also address.
Yeah, I was going to say I have a couple of great questions here, but yeah, I was going to say, should we dive right into those?
Into a practice?
Yeah, I was going to say
Or
let's. I was going to say let's take a moment and let's center ourselves as we go into those
okay,
conversations. That sound reasonable?
sounds great. Okay.
Awesome.
All right, so we'll just do like 3, 4 minutes or so, 5 minutes. So again, this is a chance just to, in a way, know your own direct experience, which means we're not creating anything and there's nothing to get rid of. So allowing the body to be really natural, comfortable, can sit in the chair that you're sitting in. Since all the rest of you are not on screen, you can lie down if you'd like. Right, and if it's helpful, if you feel safe and comfortable, you can allow the eyes to softly close, or if more comfortable, you can keep them open, doesn't really matter. And with this sense of permission, of just receiving your own experience just as it is, right, you might begin to feel the weight of the body, that there is a body, right? Maybe some of the pressures from sitting. You might begin to notice perhaps the feet on the ground. Maybe noticing where your hands are, or the experience, the direct experience of the hands. Again, so that's maybe the temperature, maybe there's vibrations, tingling. And just in a general way, knowing and remembering there is a body, and it can be a support for being in the present moment. You might invite the shoulders to relax, not making anything happen, just a soft invitation, allowing the face to soften. And wonderful. And just noticing maybe what's most predominant for you right now. And maybe you start to notice the activity of the mind, that there's some images, memories. And we're not stopping the mind from thinking. And nothing to change, nothing to stop. Or you might notice maybe how you're feeling right now. This is often a really good touch point. Just getting familiar. Does the mind and body, does it feel relaxed or stressed, tense? Without judging, just that sense of knowing what's happening. And in this last minute or so of our practice, you might just kind of allow these 3 words to land in your attention, and just sort of invitations again. These are helpful words to me to remember what I'm doing. And it's to relax, to allow, and to observe. And again, relaxing doesn't mean we need to be relaxed. It's just relaxing the agenda that something better should be happening, or that we should be feeling differently. Just relaxing with what's here, sense of allowing. And then this ability to observe, to be mindful. Okay. The bell, not sure if that came through, but
Did
thank you all for your efforts, for your uh, for your being present for some moments together. So, Tom, what's next?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Mari is going to throw something into the chat for all of our participants here. This is the entry that we talked about at the very beginning. We're going to be giving away 3 one-year subscriptions to 10% Happier, which is an app that features like Alexis as well as others. And you've just got to submit that form starting now all the way through to the end of tomorrow. And that's midnight Eastern time on Friday. So I did have a couple of questions from everybody, and I want to call out a couple of them that I think were fantastic. Dustin asks, who did you study with?
So the name, we'll put this, is there a way for me to write this down? Because
Of course.
Where am I going to write it? Is there?
I was going to say there's a chat window there. If you post that to
message
organizers
here?
and
I'll just
panelists,
write it here.
yeah, you can
I'm
write that there,
the
and then Mari will share it out.
Sayadaw means teacher. Once you've hit 10 years, it means teacher. It's sort of like an honorific term. The letter U we put before monastic names in Myanmar, and then here's the last name. And he has some wonderful free material if you just search that name, and some free ebooks that you can download that I think really are just fantastic explainers of the ease, really the ease and naturalness of what mindfulness look like. And for me, that's what I fell in love with in terms of practice. A lot of practices are much more, almost feel like a little bit like using more energy of directing to the breath and the object. This is, I find, a really helpful way when we learn the kind of gentle nature of how mindfulness works to really bring it into our daily life, into our conversations right now. How do we be mindful so that the words that come out are actually words that we intend to speak and we know the quality of them? So that kind of natural awareness grows over time, right? We know our body, we can hear the sound of our own voice. That's the working of mindfulness. So anyways, that's his name. He's about 60 years old, living in Burma. Burma's going through a lot of struggles right now, so I want to send some good wishes since we're receiving some of the blessings of his offerings over his life.
We had another question from Stuart, which was, what are the top 5 tips on meditation to a novice? Somebody maybe who doesn't have a practice today.
Yeah. Top 5 tips. Do you feel that being aware in the present moment is valuable? Do you feel that it's valuable? If you feel that it's valuable, then be inspired by that, right? Start to read about mindfulness. Maybe, there's so many groups, there's groups around you. So it might be finding a group, getting a book, so that it could be from that teacher, but from other mindfulness, if this is the kind of tradition you want to explore. It is not hard. I've said this before, mindfulness is not hard. It's remembering to be mindful. remembering to be mindful. And what are we mindful of? Again, it's our direct experience. So for example, if you're driving a car and you say, do you know, like there's a car passing, and people are very aware of everything that's going on around them, but are they actually practicing awareness? Well, awareness would mean not all the concepts about what's going on. It would be even more simple of being aware, let's say, of the experience of the body sitting and holding the steering wheel, and knowing maybe that there's some stress or anxiety or some laughter in the mind. That is knowing the direct experience. And then you also know that you're seeing, and you have that awareness that everyone has, which is how to navigate this car safely. But to be aware in the midst of our life, now we're starting to wake up and be in our direct experience. So I don't have like a top 5 in mind, so I'm just generating what other tips. It's not hard. Continuity over effort. What I mean by continuity over effort is a lot of us think of life as like we're sprinting, and we sprint through work and we sprint. It's exhausting. It's not actually skillful. It's not wisdom doing the work. So to really have a wise practice is approach it. And this of course has to grow over time. We don't just start off with wisdom, but if you trust, people who have done it well and you listen and try it, let me try that. So continuity means light. Keep it light touch, as Tom offered us, a light touch, but many touches. Light touch, many touches. That builds the habit. At some point in our practice, rather than remembering to be aware, the mind has the habit to be aware. And that is an amazing moment in practice. You're no longer trying to remember, you're always caught in forgetfulness and absent mind. Instead, now the mind is remembering. That is absolutely possible. It usually means, we have to invest some time. So you might look for another tip for a novice is maybe take a day long where you can, just search online. I offer day longs once a month. They're freely offered. So if you want to sit with me, they're free. There's so many teachers out there, that are offering. So there's so much that's available. So if you are interested, you feel that it's valuable, then it should be part of your life. If you don't think it's interesting, it's not valuable, then you let it go until the next time you suffer a lot, and then you'll come back to one of these and go, I'm suffering. Like, okay, yes, because we all suffer. And why? Because of some causes. What are those causes? Well, we have to be aware of them. Then that brings insight. And then the wisdom, the interest, all of that starts growing again. I don't know if that was 5, but it was a few.
No, that was good. No, that was stellar. Tim Anderson asked a really good question. What's the difference between mindfulness and awareness?
Great question. There are some schools that will differentiate them. I tend to just offer them like they're the same, more or less. They're the same. To be mindful of something is to be aware of it. Mindfulness now just means so much stuff that oftentimes awareness for me is a little bit more juicy and direct. My teacher would often walk by me, at the meditation center and see me chatting with someone. He would just go, "Are you aware?" And I would, of course, wanting to be a good student, I would say, "Yeah, I'm aware." And then he would say, "Sure? Are you sure?" And that really went in. Are you sure that you're aware? Well, so then I would check, well, what am I aware of? Can I feel my body? Do I know the speed of which I'm talking? Do I know something? It doesn't matter what. Do I know that I'm hearing the sounds? Awareness of hearing, not just knowing the content, but knowing that hearing is happening. Very light, very simple, right? And that grows. But in general, mindfulness and awareness, we could say the same. It's the same with, let's say, observing also is another word. In a way, we could say receiving. Some people feel like they receive their experience or they're feeling what's going on. All of that, when it's done with a sense of clarity, is the same quality, this quality that knows things as they are. It knows and allows. It doesn't, the habit is, of course, is to hold on, but we start to see that, right? We see the tendency to hold or to push. If it's unpleasant, we push it away. If it's pleasant, we hold on. And we think the holding on is going to get us more of it. We hold on to, whatever it is, food or entertainment or good experiences, and we try and get rid of everything else. And that's the deep habit of the mind. A whole nother realm of conversation, if we have another one of these, that is really one of the big insights that we get in our practice.
Well, Alexis, this has been an incredible hour. Thank you so much for the gift that you have given to us and to our community today through our conversation. And I hope that you can say, that this has been an enjoyable time for you as well.
I can definitely say that. You can tell that as soon as I start talking about practice, I love this. I love this stuff. That's why I do it. And it makes an enormous difference in life. So for any of you that are listening and tuning in, if something has been sparked, listen to that. And we really have this incredible opportunity in life, right? Not just to have life happen to us, but to choose. And part of what awareness gives us is that ability to choose. So really a gift to be here with all of you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's been an incredible hour spent with you talking about our mental health and our mindfulness here today. These are incredible skills that take a lifetime to develop. So I want to encourage everyone to focus on that, being mindful about their own mental health and being aware of your body and being aware of your mind as a part of your body. So here at Jump Cloud, we're here to make work happen. We're here to make remote work happen. And you can find out more information about our company at jumpcloud.com. And of course, if you haven't yet filled out the form, please do. If you're having trouble using the form, you can always drop your name and email address to, I believe it is press@jumpcloud.com, and we'll include you in the drawing. And again, entries need to be in by Friday close of business. Other than that, thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. It's always a pleasure to see you. Please come back to us at jumpcloud.com, and you can learn more about directory as a service and modern IT practices with good IT management. Alexis, thank you so much on behalf of Jump Cloud for joining us today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful to be here with you, Tom.
Cool.
Take care. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. And to you. Be well.
Great. All right. Ciao.
Please subscribe and check out more content from us.